Radical and repugnant Congresswoman Lauren Boebert is now openly trying to destroy the Constitution, the very Constitution that she claims to love, that she claims to treat almost as if it were a sacred text or a religious doctrine of sorts. She now wants pastors to preach how churches can influence the direction of government. Now, understand that in order to be nonprofit entities and not pay all sorts of different taxes, churches actually have to avoid politics altogether. And what Lauren Boebert is suggesting is not just that churches get involved in politics, but that churches actually get directly involved in trying to influence government rather than just their parishioners or the people attending their church services. And this is the second time in 3 weeks that Lauren Boebert is openly hostile to separation of church and state, enshrined by the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And they will often not even justify it in any real way. Occasionally, they will say, you know, the founding fathers were Christian, so therefore we don't need separation of church and state. Well, they may have been, some of them anyway, but they recognized the importance of that being their personal set of beliefs and not part of civil government. So let's get into the first clip here. Lauren Boebert says we need churches influencing government. Sorry, Lauren, that's not what the Constitution says.
And I believe that great patriots all throughout this nation and Christians will begin to position themselves in these days, in these times, that pastors would have a boldness to speak from the pulpit of their churches, to direct and inform the church on how to influence the direction of government.
That is the opposite of what the Constitution says needs to be the way the country is organized. And in fact, we already have, I mean, the sad reality is, much like the checks and balances that Trump ignored and seems to have successfully ignored, at least for now, in terms of consequences, in theory, when churches do politics, they lose their tax-exempt status. In practice, I've been covering for close to 2 decades churches that do politics, and we almost never see them lose their tax-exempt status. So both, what Lauren Boebert is saying is both completely against both the Constitution and the tax code, and they'll probably get away with it because there is very limited willingness or resources among the IRS to actually police this. Now, this is not a new thing with Lauren Boebert. This is Lauren Boebert's new calling. She recently, again, in the trend of trashing the very Constitution that she claims to revere, she said she's tired of separation of church and state. She called it junk, in fact.
The reason we had so many overreaching regulations in our nation is because the church complied. The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
So that is open hostility to what is actually in the Constitution. Now, of course, the Establishment Clause is where we see that enshrined. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. That also means putting the non-religious at any kind of disadvantage. It's one way or the other. And the founding fathers seemed better, not that they were perfect, at separating their personal beliefs from what should be the role of religion in government. When they talk about, you know, it is true when she refers to a letter, she's talking about Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson is maybe responsible for the most famous use of the metaphor separation of church and state from a letter where he talks about a wall of separation. And the new thing that Republicans love to do is to say it's not really in the Constitution. It was just in a letter that Jefferson wrote. But first of all, the letters are relevant in telling us the intent of the founding fathers. You know, James Madison also in private, what we would call private communications, made clear that any government involvement in religion or support for any particular religion, or even the placing in a preferred status of religion over non-religion, would be improper and inappropriate for government. And also you have the Establishment Clause. So as often is the case, Democrats are going to try to steal the election and use fraud and all this. Actually, they did it. They are actually the ones that did that thing. Whenever they point to something, we should be wondering, are they actually the ones doing it? And when they say the left is destroying the Constitution and wants to use it as toilet paper or whatever the case may be, we should be wondering whether it is actually they who are trying to do that. And that is exactly what Lauren Boebert is trying to do. Now, to their credit, there are some more mainstream Republicans, Mitt Romney, for example, who doesn't agree with this perspective. He is, as far as I have most recently seen from Mitt Romney, he is personally very religious. He's Mormon and on, but he would take issue with what Lauren Boebert says in this clip. Many other Republicans won't support it publicly, but they like what she's saying, so they'll just shut their mouths. And then you have the ones that are just full-throated endorsers of what Lauren Boebert is saying, and it's dangerous. And if they end up getting more power, whether it's the House, Senate, more governorships at the state level, they will try to make this establishment of Christianity in government even more of a reality than it already is. Because to some degree, it already is there. Which religion gets federal holidays? Just Christianity, right? I mean, Easter and Christmas. There's no other religion that gets federal holidays. And so many other things that we've talked about. 10 Commandments displays at courthouses and on and on and on. It will get worse.